Paris, late October 2001. In a blinding French talk show studio, the red tally light burns, and a woman who once floated to Dior couture sits unnervingly still. Her voice is even, her claims explosive, directed at powerful figures, including a European royal. By sunrise, the interview is pulled. The tape vanishes into a vault, headlines breed without answers, a hospital admission replaces a front row seat. The industry does what it does best with inconvenient beauty. It edits. How did the crown jewel of Parisian fashion become the woman no one wanted to hear? Was she unraveling, or the only one willing to say what everyone feared? Before the footage disappeared, Karen Mulder had already flipped the script. The question is whether we ever allowed her to finish it. Karen Mulder was born in the quiet Dutch city of Vlaardingen, a world away from the mirrored catwalks and flashbulbs that would one day define her. The daughter of a civil servant and a homemaker, her childhood was measured in bicycle rides and the hum of North Sea winds. She wasn't the loudest in the room, nor the girl who dreamed of Paris. She was simply striking without knowing it, with eyes the exact blue of a Delft tile. That anonymity vanished at 17. On a dare from friends, she entered the elite model look competition. The contest was meant to be a local diversion until her photograph landed on the desk of Elite's founder. Within months, Karen was boarding a train to Paris, clutching a single suitcase and a note from her parents. Paris in the late 80s was a city in love with excess, and Karen's elegance was a quiet rebellion against its noise. Dior, Chanel, and Valentino saw it instantly. In just a year, the girl from the flatlands was living in the rarefied air of hot couture salons, the kind of spaces where the scent of roses cost more than her father's monthly salary. She hadn't just entered the world of fashion, she had been crowned one of its most luminous inheritors. Paris in the early 1990s was a carousel of camera flashes, and Karen Mulder was at its glittering center. Within 2 years of arriving, her face had graced the covers of Vogue in every major fashion capital: Paris, Milan, New York. She moved through couture salons like she was born to them, her cheekbones catching the light as if carved for the very purpose. Designers spoke about her in the hushed tones usually reserved for art. The Dior woman made flesh, the Chanel muse who could silence a room simply by stepping into it. Karl Lagerfeld dressed her in tweed and pearls. Gianni Versace sent her down runways in liquid gold. But Karen was not merely a mannequin for fabric. She had presence, the kind that made photographers linger a second longer and audiences leaned forward. Her walk was deliberate, each step a metronome of confidence. She could pivot from the severe elegance of Yves Saint Laurent to the bare-shouldered glamour of Versace without breaking character. In 1996, she did something few high-fashion models could. She crossed into the commercial stratosphere. Victoria's Secret handed her a pair of angel wings, making her one of the brand's original faces on its newly televised runway. It was a calculated gamble. Couture purists scoffed, but it cemented her as a household name. From Milan to Miami, she embodied a rare duality: the untouchable sophistication of haute couture and the approachable allure of lingerie campaigns. By the turn of the millennium, Karen's career portfolio read like a museum catalog of fashion's greatest hits. She wasn't just walking runways, she was curating the fantasy of an entire era, one immaculate photograph at a time. October 31, 2001. The set of Tout le monde en parle glowed under French studio lights. Karen Mulder sat poised in the guest chair, her hair smooth, her voice even, but what she was about to say would detonate like a flashbulb in a dark room. She spoke of being harmed by men in positions of extraordinary power, including a European royal. She claimed it happened not in shadows, but in plain sight, woven into the fabric of an industry that thrived on secrecy. The host listened, the audience shifted uncomfortably, and somewhere in the control room, a producer made a decision. This would never see daylight. The episode was pulled before broadcast, the master tape locked away. Outside those walls, Karen had already filed a formal criminal complaint, prompting an official investigation, one that, for all its gravity, seemed to vanish into the hush of powerful corridors. By the week's end, the narrative had shifted. She wasn't a whistleblower anymore. She was unstable. Newspapers reported she had been admitted to Villa Mansouri's, a psychiatric clinic in Paris. Whispers framed her as delusional. The industry avoided her calls, and the same media that once idolized her now printed her face under headlines heavy with doubt. In December 2002, headlines flared again, this time about a hospital stay after an apparent overdose of prescription medication. The details were vague, the tone clinical, but the effect was the same. Karen's public image was no longer under her control. What had begun as an attempt to tell her story had been rewritten as the downfall of a fragile mind. The fashion world moved on quickly. Her runway invitations stopped. Campaign offers evaporated. And Karen Mulder, once the crown jewel of Paris, was reduced to a cautionary tale whispered backstage. Whether her words had been inconvenient truth or the product of unraveling sanity was a question no one seemed willing to investigate. For nearly 6 years, Karen Mulder was little more than a ghost in the fashion pages. Her name surfacing only in rumors, her image replaced by newer, safer faces. Then, in the summer of 2007, she stepped back onto the runway for Dior's autumn-winter haute couture show in Paris. The audience, a blend of industry veterans and bright-eyed newcomers, erupted in recognition. Here she was, moving with the same deliberate grace, the same regal posture that once made her untouchable. But this was not a grand comeback. It was a cameo, a brief, luminous flicker. Karen did not re-enter the relentless circuit of shows and campaigns. Instead, she gravitated toward a quieter existence, occasionally granting interviews that sidestepped the old wounds, focusing instead on family and the art of living slowly. She appeared in charity events, supported causes close to her heart, and, when asked about the past, often answered with a half-smile that said more than words ever could. To some, this was a tragedy, a career cut short by forces both internal and external. To others, it was a reclamation. In choosing to step away, Karen rewrote the script the industry had prepared for her. No longer a prop in someone else's fantasy, she became the curator of her own life, allowing the world to see her only on her own terms. Her brief return to Dior served as a reminder: beauty can be timeless, but peace is priceless. For Karen, the runway was no longer a place to prove anything. It was simply a stage she could visit, then leave behind. Karen Mulder's career remains one of fashion's sharpest contrasts, from the untouched elegance of haute couture to the deafening silence that followed her words. In the annals of the 1990s supermodel era, her name is often whispered rather than celebrated, a cautionary emblem of what can happen when beauty collides with power. Her story is not neatly resolved. The allegations she made on that October night were never aired, never fully examined in public. For some, this is proof of fragility. For others, it is proof of just how efficiently an industry, and the forces around it, can erase a voice it does not want to hear. Whether she was unwell, inconvenient, or both, the result was the same. Karen was made to vanish from a stage she had once ruled. And yet her image endures. In photographs from her peak, she is ageless, the glacial poise, the otherworldly symmetry. Younger models still study her walk, stylists still reference her campaigns. But her legacy is more than the sum of her covers. It is a reminder of the unspoken contract between women and the worlds that profit from them. You may speak, but only when it serves the story they want to tell. Karen Mulder broke that contract, and in doing so, she forced to question the industry's still sidesteps. What happens when a woman stops being a fantasy and starts telling the truth, or at least her truth?